it says in a book that I know well, and I imagine many in the audience know well, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us persevere in running the race that lies before us. And those words are fitting for the group of people presenting today and the group of people who have put the research together. They're fitting for the audience that's together to hear these words and see the images. And they certainly are true of the great cloud of witnesses that make up Shining Light on Truth's early Black lives at Yale, the more than 200 of the earliest Black students in the history of Yale. I want to give a couple introductory remarks. I want to particularly thank my colleagues, Jennifer Coggins and Hope McGrath, among many others, but those two have been real centurions in the research and production, and Jennifer will be part of the presentation shortly. This is ongoing work centered at Beinecke, but that involves colleagues across Yale Library, across campus, across the New Haven community, across the alumni community, and it really is a great cloud of witnesses. Last year, as many in the audience know, Beinecke partnered with the New Haven Museum to produce the exhibit Shining Light on Truth, New Haven, Yale, and Slavery, that went on view on February 16th and will stay on view through March 1st. Core to this exhibit, we worked to identify the earliest Black students at Yale from James W.C. Pennington down through the next century up to about the year 1940, from the 1830s to about 1940. And as part of the exhibition, we produced brief biographical profiles of these students, more than 200, and featured portraits of about 60 of them in the exhibition's 1831 College Library Room. I'll drop in the chat the link to the New Haven Museum for those who are nearby New Haven to check that out if you haven't had a chance yet. Again, it's on view through Saturday, March 1st of this year. We have had extraordinary interest and excitement about these portraits and biographies and the stories of these earliest Black students at Yale. And so we have continued since the exhibition went on view to do the research and think about ways that we can make it even more openly accessible online, and also to have it live on in various different venues, in exhibitions and other means over the course of the years. We're really excited that we will have a new exhibition that will succeed the exhibition at the New Haven Museum. So there will be a related new exhibition opening on March 24th at the Yale Schwartzman Center, just next door to Beinecke. That exhibition will center on the central role of Black people at Yale and in New Haven history, including many of the students identified through the project on the earliest Black students at Yale. And I'll drop a link in the chat later to that exhibition, and you'll hear more about that, which will be on view again at the Yale Schwartzman Center from March 24th through the rest of this year. We will also, and you'll hear more about this, and this is sort of a teaser for everyone in this audience, be making the biographical profiles available through a new website launching next month. We're really excited about it, and you'll hear a little bit more as the program today goes on. Many of the students we have identified in this project were active in civil rights work before, during, and after their time at Yale. Just as one example, at least 25 early Yale Black alums were active in the NAACP from its origin in its early decades, as chapter presidents and founders, members of the National Executive Committee, as lawyers and members of its National Legal Committee, and in other key roles. Today, we'll be profiling just a few of the many, many early Black Yale students and graduates who were active in the long civil rights movement. I'll offer two, and then Mohammed and others will follow with offering more. And as Tobias noted, we'll have time for conversation and questions at the end. So let's look at some of these great cloud of witnesses. If you could move to the next slide. This is William Pickens, a graduate of Yale College in 1904. William Pickens was born on January 15, 1881, in Anderson County, South Carolina, to formerly enslaved parents. William showed impressive academic achievement, graduating as valedictorian of Union High School in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1899, and going on to graduate from Talladega College in Alabama, that great HBCU, graduating from Talladega in 1902, before coming to receive a second bachelor's degree here at Yale in 1904. He graduated in 1904 in the Honor Society Phi Beta Kappa and won prizes for his excellent oratory. This was noted in newspapers around the country. He would later also go on to receive a master's degree from Fisk University, another HBCU in Nashville, Tennessee, in 1908, a PhD in literature from Selma University in Alabama in 1915, and an LLD, a doctorate in law from Wiley University in Marshall, Texas in 1918, all while simultaneously pursuing a career working in academia while he was doing all these degrees. Extraordinarily impressive. Pickens married Minnie Cooper McAlpin of Meridian, Mississippi in 1905, and they would have 3 children. His first postgraduate job was as a professor at Talladega College for 10 years, and he subsequently worked as dean of Morgan College in Baltimore, Maryland from 1915 to 1920. During this time, he also began his prolific writing career, publishing a 2-part autobiography under the title The Heir of Slaves in 1911, and published another autobiographical work under the title Bursting Bonds in 1923. These works reflected on his upbringing, education, and participation in the Harlem Renaissance. Pickens was an active participant in the ongoing conversation in the 19-teens and 1920s surrounding Black civil rights and the New Negro movement. He published a collection of essays under the title The New Negro, His Political, Civil, and Mental Status in 1916. Pickens would leave a career in academia in 1920 and spent the next 20 years working for the NAACP, the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization. He had been involved with the NAACP from its founding in 1910. He helped establish the organization's Louisville, Kentucky branch and worked as a field secretary, becoming an influential speaker and writer who massively grew the organization's membership. After leaving the NAACP after great success, after leaving in 1942, he went on to work for the United States Treasury Department, supporting the sale of saving bonds during World War II. He retired in 1951 and died while visiting Jamaica on April 6, 1954. We are glad that he lives on in so many ways, in the legacy of the books he wrote, in the legacy of the NAACP chapters he helped catalyze, and in a very important collection of papers that were given to Beinecke by his grandson, and that are an extraordinary resource for learning about Pickens and learning about the nation. So William Pickens, graduate of Yale College, 1904. We could move to the next slide. This picture shows James Hathaway Robinson, a graduate of Yale College in 1912, who received a master's degree in economics in 1914, and then received a PhD from Yale in 1934. So this is Dr. James Hathaway Robinson. Robinson was born in 1887 in Sharpsburg, Kentucky, to Nathaniel Robinson and Martha Summers Robinson. He graduated from Fisk University in 1911 and joined the Yale College class of 1912, his second undergraduate degree. He was a recipient of the university scholarship. After graduating from Yale College in 1912, he received a Larned Fellowship at Yale and completed a master's degree in economics. He was the first Black student to receive this Yale Fellowship. In 1916, James Hathaway Robinson married Neola Estella Woodson, and the two of them had 2 children. Receiving a fellowship from the Urban League, Robinson studied sociology and social service at Columbia University and then taught for a few years at Douglas High School in Cincinnati, Ohio, and at the Hampton Institute, now Hampton University in Virginia. Starting in 1917, he was executive secretary of Cincinnati's Negro Civic Welfare Association, an organization that served to coordinate and support social service efforts across the city of Cincinnati. His work included establishing 2 child care centers, developing a recreational and industrial program, and supporting Black social agencies. He helped found the Shoemaker Health and Welfare Center and served as its superintendent. In 1929, Robinson returned to Nashville, serving as the supervisor of a Black social services department within the Tennessee State Department of Welfare and teaching at Fisk University. He began pursuing a PhD in sociology at Yale, graduating in 1934. While finishing his degree, he began teaching sociology at Wilberforce University. He served as dean of the College of Liberal Arts at Wilberforce from 1939 to 1949, and was also the Ohio State supervisor for the National Youth Administration. Robinson began teaching at Morris Brown College in 1949, where he also served as a dean and as chair of the Department of Sociology. Robinson was a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, numerous academic and professional organizations in the fields of sociology, history, social work, and political science, and Fisk and Yale alumni organizations. In the 1920s, he served as the national president of the Fisk Alumni Association. His PhD thesis is available and gives great insights into his work. He did for the city of Cincinnati and for Memphis studies that were similar to what W.E.B. Du Bois did in the Philadelphia Negro about Philadelphia. So Robinson, like all of the people you will meet today, has a legacy that lives on in the students and their heirs who he educated, lives on in the organizations he helped found and or sustained. And here in New Haven, we're really happy that it lives on in a great colleague. Robinson himself died in Atlanta in 1963. One of his grandchildren, Dr. Forrester Woody Lee, is known to many in this audience, I'm sure, a great leader in our community, himself a graduate of Yale, 1979 graduate of the Yale School of Medicine, and a longtime faculty member at the Yale School of Medicine. So Woody is one great example of the ancestors of the people you will meet today who've continued to make great impact in the world we live in now. Thank you again for joining us, and happy now to turn it over to colleagues for more of these great cloud of witnesses.
Hey everybody, I'm Mohammed. I'll be presenting William Yancey Bell. Born in 1887, the son of a minister and the grandson of an enslaved man who escaped with his family from slavery in North Carolina, William Yancey Bell received his BA from Plain College in Jackson, Tennessee, and went on to go to Northwestern University, where he managed to complete his education at Northwestern within only 3 months. He became proficient in Assyrian, Aramaic, Arabic, Syriac, and Greek, and earned praise from the local Chicago African-American community. And he published a thesis that explored, the words and the Semitic context surrounding Genesis. And the head of the Greek department at Northwestern claimed to surpass any thesis he had ever seen. After completing his master's, Bell went on to return to Lane College, where he served as a professor, and then became a deacon in Evanston, Illinois, and New York City, and also an Army chaplain during World War I. He received a Carroll Cutler Fellowship and attended Yale University in 1921 and pursued a graduate degree in Semitic and Biblical languages. He wrote a dissertation on a translated Arabic text, which relied on words from the Quran to help better translate. And this thesis was well received amongst the community, amongst classicists, such that it was published in the Nile Mission Press in Cairo and disseminated across libraries in the Americas and Europe. The work also became popular amongst Black intellectuals such as W.E.B. Du Bois, who used him as an example of Black excellence. In 1928, Bell joined the faculty of Gammon Theological Seminary and taught political studies at Morris Brown and Howard. And in 1938, he became a bishop of the CME Church. He initially started this church in New York and deaconed there for about 9 years. During the 1920s, he was also affiliated with the Garvey movement, but he never considered himself fully as a Garveyite. And he was also a lifetime member of the NAACP. He was a part of other African-American leaders, civil rights leaders, such as Mary McLeod Bethune, A. Philip Randolph, and Walter White, in meeting with President Harry Truman surrounding African-American participation in administration and policy within the U.S. military. And from the pulpit, as bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, he fought for civil rights, mobilizing church resources that won in praise across Black newspapers across the country during the 1950s. And in 1957, he was one of the Black leaders participating in the prayer pilgrimage for freedom in Washington, D.C., organized by Martin Luther King Jr. He died in 1962 at the age of 75, being remembered in the newspaper as a lifetime member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and a key fundraiser for the NAACP. His contributions, continue to live on with fellowships being named after him. Next, please. Booker Taliaferro Charles Medford, who attended Yale Divinity School between 1931 to 1933. He was born in North Carolina in 1906 to a Reverend H.T. Medford, a bishop in the AME Zion Church, and M.E. Medford. He attended high school in Knoxville, Tennessee, and at Dunbar High School in Washington, D.C. While in high school in D.C., he managed circulation of a Black weekly publication. He attended Livingstone College, where he studied sociology and education, and was the first tenor in a college vocal quartet, graduating in 1930. In 1931, he was a minister at St. Paul's AME Zion Church in Branford, Connecticut, and entered Yale Divinity School. In 1932 note in Medford's student file, Dean Luther Weigel lauded his singing, saying, "I have heard Mr. Medford sing the Negro spirituals on a number of occasions in Dwight Memorial Chapel, Yale College, the chapel of the Divinity School, and public worship at the Church of the Redeemer and elsewhere. His rendition is admirable. He has a voice well suited to the songs and interprets them with reverence and a depth of feeling." Medford left in 1933, where he continued his career as a minister in Massachusetts, New York, Virginia, North Carolina, and Alabama. It was noted for his musical and dramatic performances. He was married to Eunice Classard Medford, and they had 4 daughters. During World War II, he attended the Army Chaplain School at Harvard University. And of particular note, in 1942, as a pastor in Attleboro, Massachusetts, Medford denounced the local white ministers who sought to prevent Black soldiers stationed nearby from attending their lectures. In a quotation, he wrote, "This local and national attitude of selective protection and opportunity must give way along with other pet prejudices if we are to have a real democracy, where Christian democracy extols the value of and fights for the welfare, the safety, and the freedom of all people everywhere." Another episode from a letter Medford sends to the editor of the New York Times, he mentions this bill that President Harry S. Truman was pushing for Congress for a new Civil Rights Act. And, he praises it and, goes one step beyond, saying that, after this Civil Rights Act is passed, it's very important that the Black community ensures that they can protect the new rights that they just secured for themselves, writing, "Civil rights should not be looked upon as a newfound freedom, but rather as a challenge to all Americans alike. With every privilege there is a corresponding responsibility." And he lists out that upon the passage of the Civil Rights Act, there is responsibility to take advantage of the social and economic opportunities that Black people most deservedly win. While serving in church in Stoughton, Virginia, he was also appointed the president of Stoughton's NAACP chapter. He was also a Mason, member of the Elks, and a member of the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. And he died in 1970.
Thank you, Mohammed. Jane Matilda Boland was the first Black woman to graduate from the Yale Law School, and she was also the first Black woman in the United States to become a judge. She was born in Poughkeepsie, New York in 1908 to Matilda Ingram Emery and the attorney Gaius C. Boland. And she graduated from Wellesley College in 1928 and then entered the Yale Law School after graduating, and graduated from the Yale Law School in 1931. After she graduated from Yale, she worked with her father's legal practice in Poughkeepsie for a brief period of time. And then in 1933, she moved to New York City, where she practiced law with her new husband, Ralph Meisel. She then went to work for the New York City Corporation Counsel Office. And in 1939, at age 31, she was appointed as a judge in what is now the Family Court of New York. And in this role, she was an advocate for the rights of children, for education, for civil rights, and for the integration of racial integration of public services for children and families. Two examples of changes that she advocated for in her role were to end the assignment of probation officers on the basis of race, and also mandating that private childcare agencies that received public funds serve children of all backgrounds. And she served in her role as a judge for 40 years, retiring at age 70 when she was mandated to retire at that age. She also served on the board of the Urban League, on the board of the NAACP and the Child Welfare League. In a 1958 speech, she was referring to the rights for women. She said, "Those gains we have made were never graciously and generously granted. We have had to fight every inch of the way in the face of sometimes insufferable humiliations." The Yale Law School Association recognized Bolin with its Medal of Merit in 1994, and there's now a portrait of Jane Bolin hanging in the Yale Law School. She passed away at age 98 in 2007, and her legacy very much lives on campus, in the community, and throughout the communities that she served through her lifetime. Charles Wesley Burton was born in 1884 in Mississippi, and he received a Bachelor's of Science from Talladega College before graduating from Yale Divinity School in 1913. He later went on to receive a JD law degree from the John Marshall Law School. He was one of the students on the Yale campus who was responsible for reactivating the Zeta chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And while he was at Yale, he also wrote a thesis on living conditions for Black residents in New Haven, which is a really valuable historical source. In 1913, he married Emma May Walker from Atlanta, and they had at least 4 children. After graduating from Yale, he served as a pastor in Macon, Georgia, and he was part of the leadership of the American Missionary Association. He lived much of his life in Chicago, where he became a prominent leader in the city's labor and civil rights movements. From 1918 to 1927, he was the pastor of the Lincoln Memorial Congregational United Church of Christ. And in 1929, he passed the Illinois bar and began his career as a lawyer, employed by the Cook County Juvenile Court. He served as president of the Chicago Council of the National Negro Congress. He was president of the Chicago chapter of the March on Washington movement. And he was also chairman of the Citizens Committee of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and was active in the NAACP and a number of other civil rights and church organizations. In the 1930s and 40s, Burton helped lead fights against discrimination in employment, housing, education, and economic policy. He spoke out against lynching and racial violence and built national movements for racial justice. He was a friend and a frequent correspondent of the labor and civil rights leader A. Philip Randolph, and they collaborated on events and organizing in Chicago and St. Louis and elsewhere, particularly related to the March on Washington movement. Burton was really instrumental in organizing a 1942 meeting of the March on Washington Committee in Chicago, which drew a crowd of 12,000 people. The scholar Merle Reed has noted that Burton's remarks at the event actually attracted the attention of J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, particularly his announcement that Randolph was planning a march on the nation's capital to draw attention to Jim Crow. In the 1940s, Burton worked to bring the ideas and practices of nonviolence and nonviolent resistance to Chicago. He brought in experts to teach the principles of nonviolence and civil disobedience, and was strongly influenced by the independence movement in India and the example of Gandhi, practices that later, as we know, were foundational to the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. He passed away in 1957, again, leaving a long legacy of organizing and mobilizing people for the movement, particularly in Chicago. I'll now pass it on to Charles Warner Jr.
Thank you very much. I get the pleasure of talking about Joseph D. Bibb. And Joseph Bibb was born in Montgomery, Alabama in 1892 to Joseph Bibb and Viola Lovett. The Bibbs soon moved to Atlanta, where Joseph's father was a dean and professor at Morris Brown College, which is a creation of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. The Bibbs were very active in the social and civic life of Atlanta's Black leadership elite, which also included men like Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois and the family of future NAACP leader Walter Francis White. Joseph attended Atlanta University and then went on to Livingstone College, where he graduated in 1912. He pursued a master's degree at Columbia University and then went to Harvard University for law school. But due to an interruption in classes at Harvard during World War I, Joseph Bibb transferred to Yale Law School, graduating in 1918. Upon graduation, Bibb settled in Chicago, where he practiced law and got involved in politics as a Republican. He also was involved in Black Chicago's fight for equal and economic rights. He was actually the leader of the Don't Spend Where You Can't Work campaign. Bibb wrote articles for the Pittsburgh Courier and eventually was brought in to aid a Black Chicago newspaper, the Chicago Whip, which he did alongside fellow Black Yale graduate Arthur McNeil. And Bibb oversaw the paper until 1932. Bibb practiced law and in 1953 joined the cabinet of Illinois Governor William Stratton, being appointed as the Illinois Director of Public Safety. And this made Bibb the first African American to serve in an Illinois governor's cabinet, having a cabinet level position. And Bibb served not only in law and as an activist and a newspaperman, he also served the community by being a board member of the Chicago Library and a trustee of a well-known hospital founded by the famed Daniel Hill Williams, the Provident Hospital. Bibb was a husband and father, and his wife was Goldie Thompson. Interesting note about Joseph Bibb. His sister was married to Harry H. Pace, who was the founder of three groundbreaking and prominent Black business operations. And those are the Pace and Handy Music Publishing Company, Black Swan Records, and the Supreme Life Insurance Company of Chicago. Next slide, please. Fred Branford Syphax. Fred Syphax was born in 1880 in Washington, D.C. to a prosperous Black family there. His parents were Cordelia Webster and Colbert Stewart Syphax Sr. Colbert had an interesting job for the time, considered to be a prominent position of employment. He served as a messenger and the Department of State and the Department of Treasury, obviously desirable as this was an office government job. The Colbert-Syphax family had several children, including Fred Syphax, and they were counted among the elite of Washington's Black citizens. And this was not only due to Colbert's government job, but they also had a well-known and documented ancestry leading back to the very founding of the nation. Fred's father was the son of Mariah Custis, and Mariah Custis was a biracial daughter of George Washington Parke Custis and an enslaved woman named Ariana Carter. If anyone knows, George Washington Parke Custis was the grandson of Martha Washington, the wife of America's first president, George Washington. And so this would make Fred Syphax the great-great-great-grandson of Martha Washington. The extended Syphax family was also very much so involved in the development of many of Washington's early Black institutions. The Syphaxes would have been able to provide their children with the opportunity to be formally educated in the very high quality Black schools in the segregated Washington, D.C. public school system. That education propelled Fred to attend Exeter and then go to Yale College. And Fred Syphax graduated in the class of 1906 and became a distinguished educator, both in high school level teaching and also college and university teaching. Like many Black academics of his day, Fred Syphax shared his greatness with historically Black colleges and universities, including Howard University, Bluefield State in West Virginia, Morgan State University in Baltimore, and Johnson C. Smith in Charlotte, North Carolina. In the vein of so many other of the Syphax family members, Fred was very involved in community work, particularly in pushing young people to be geared towards college. And he made a very significant effort to push the idea for college training amongst Black young men. And he did so to bolster that effort. He was a charter member of the Alpha Omicron chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha at Johnson C. Smith in Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the people that we've featured today are just a few of the over 230 Black students that we've identified so far who attended Yale from around the 1830s through the year 1940. Each person has their own fascinating story, and it's really been a privilege to get to know them through this research. Their stories, taken individually and also together, also provide insights into the times in which they lived, into the history of their families, the history of the university and higher education in the United States, the history of New Haven, and so much more. We want to make the information that we've gathered as part of this project more widely accessible in order to facilitate further work in this area. And we've created an online research tool where you will be able to browse and search the profiles that we've compiled of these early Black Yale students. You'll be able to read the profiles of all the students that have been identified so far, as well as search by things like Yale School, search by other colleges and universities that students attended, search by other places that they lived, time ranges, time periods when they attended the school or the time period in which they lived, and other factors that we hope will help facilitate greater inquiry into the lives and experiences of these students. And we hope it will inspire and inform many others who are interested in exploring this history. And we expect the website to be available next month. So please keep an eye on the Beinecke social media and our email list for the link when it goes out. Also, as Mike mentioned earlier, please mark your calendars for the upcoming exhibit, Shining Light on Truth, Black Lives at Yale and in New Haven, that is going to be opening at the Schwartzman Center on the Yale campus, March 24th of this year. And finally, this research that has informed this presentation and will be made available through the website and through the upcoming exhibit is ongoing research, and we welcome input. If you, as the website goes up and you begin exploring it, if you know of a Black student who attended Yale up to the year 1940 who may not have been identified by the project yet, or have information that you want to share or feedback to share about the project, questions about the project, please reach out to us at the beinecke.library@yale.edu email address, and we would look forward to hearing from you.